As we delve into the second part of our exploration of the origin of Black people according to the Bible, it is important to expand the scope of our analysis to include the role of Black people in the history of Christianity, as well as modern interpretations of biblical texts. African Christianity, which has its roots in the earliest centuries of the Church, provides a rich context for understanding how Black people have engaged with the Bible and shaped its interpretation over time. Additionally, contemporary discussions of race and theology have further illuminated the place of Black people within the biblical narrative and have challenged historical misinterpretations that have marginalized African contributions to biblical exegesis. In this second part, we will explore how African Christianity developed, the significance of key African theologians and church leaders, and how modern African and African diaspora scholars have interpreted the Bible. We will also examine how these interpretations have contributed to contemporary discussions about race, justice, and identity in relation to the Bible. Many people are unaware that African Christianity has ancient roots, dating back to the early centuries of the Church. North Africa, in particular, played a crucial role in the development of Christian theology, producing some of the most important early church fathers and theologians. Egypt, Ethiopia, Carthage, and other regions in Africa were key centers of Christian thought and practice during the first few centuries after Christ. Christianity spread to these regions long before it reached large parts of Europe, and African theologians made significant contributions to the formation of Christian doctrine. One of the most influential early African Christians was Augustine of Hippo, who lived in the 4th and 5th centuries in what is now modern-day Algeria. Augustine is considered one of the most important theologians in Christian history, and his writings on topics such as grace, sin, and salvation have shaped Christian thought for centuries. Although Augustine's ethnicity has been the subject of debate, it is widely accepted that he was of Berber descent, meaning that he came from an indigenous African people group. In addition to Augustine, other prominent African church fathers included Tertullian, Origen, and Athanasius. Tertullian, often called the father of Latin Christianity, was an early Christian apologist from Carthage who was instrumental in shaping Western Christian theology. Athanasius, the bishop of Alexandria, was a staunch defender of the doctrine of the Trinity and played a key role in the development of Orthodox Christian beliefs about the nature of God. Africa was also home to the first major Christian kingdom outside of the Roman Empire, Ethiopia. Christianity arrived in Ethiopia in the 4th century, and the Ethiopian Orthodox Church became one of the oldest organized Christian denominations in the world. Ethiopia's deep connection to biblical history, particularly through the tradition of the Queen of Sheba, and its early adoption of Christianity have made it a unique and enduring center of African Christian faith. The presence of Black people in early Christianity has often been overlooked or downplayed in traditional Eurocentric narratives of church history. However, modern scholars and theologians have sought to recover and highlight the significance of African contributions to Christianity, emphasizing that African Christians were among the earliest and most influential leaders of the Church. The history of African Christianity does not end with the early Church Fathers, however. In the modern era, particularly in the context of the African diaspora, Black Christians have continued to engage with the Bible in ways that challenge dominant interpretations and assert the dignity and value of Black people in the biblical narrative. In the aftermath of the transatlantic slave trade and colonialism, many Black theologians and scholars in the African diaspora have sought to reclaim the Bible as a text that speaks to the experiences of Black people and their struggle for freedom and justice. This has been especially true in the context of liberation theology and the Black church in the United States. One of the most influential voices in this movement was James H. Cone, often called the father of Black liberation theology. Cone argued that the Bible, particularly the narrative of the Exodus and the life of Jesus, speaks directly to the experience of oppressed peoples, including Black people. For Cone, the God of the Bible is a God who sides with the oppressed and calls for liberation from systems of injustice. In this view, The biblical narrative is not one of racial hierarchy or exclusion, but rather one of liberation and inclusion. Cone's work, along with the broader movement of Black liberation theology, has had a profound impact on how Black people in the African diaspora engage with the Bible. It has encouraged Black Christians to see themselves as central to the biblical story of redemption and to challenge interpretations that have historically marginalized or excluded them. Similarly, African theologians in the modern era have developed their own approaches to biblical interpretation, often emphasizing the communal and cultural dimensions of African life in their readings of Scripture. African biblical scholars such as John Biddy and Kwame Bediako have explored how African cultural values, such as communalism and respect for ancestors, can inform Christian theology and biblical interpretation in ways that resonate with African experiences. The full scope of modern African and diaspora contributions to biblical exegesis and theology is vast, but at its core is a shared commitment to reclaiming the Bible as a text that affirms the dignity and worth of Black people, and that speaks to the ongoing struggle for justice, freedom, and inclusion. Through these interpretations, the Bible is understood not as a tool of oppression, but as a source of hope and empowerment for Black people throughout history and into the present day.